Should a mosque be built near Ground Zero? Would that be a sign of religious freedom and acceptance of the Muslim faith? Or would it be disrespectful to the memories of the thousands of people who died there on September 11th? It's Your Call debates that controversial issue next. In the 9 years since America was attacked on September 11th, there's been plenty of debate. First, should the U.S. have invaded Iraq? Then, was it our job to topple Saddam Hussein from power? Were there really weapons of mass destruction? And should the borders be closed to people from that part of the world? Now, a new controversy has arisen. Should a mosque be built just 2 blocks from Ground Zero? Coming up in just a moment, a spirited debate on that issue featuring Tariq El-Shabazz, who supports its construction, and Tom Atkins, who is opposed to it. These are two of our most outspoken guests here on It's Your Call, so you'll want to be sure to stick around for that. But first, a story of loss and recovery, a theme that we've seen repeated many times here since September 11th, 2001. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lynn Doyle. We'll have that discussion on the proposed mosque at Ground Zero in just a few minutes, but first, we're joined by Joseph Camerata, whose brother Michael, a 22-year-old rookie firefighter, died on September 11th. Michael was the youngest New York City firefighter lost that day. In his first book, Joe writes about his personal experience as a police officer responding to the September 11th tragedy. Then he talks about the realization that his brother was among those missing, and finally, the impact the attack has had on his own life. His book is called Face of Courage, Rise from the Rubble. Joe, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
And again, our condolences on the loss of your brother. It's been 9 years, but I'm sure that as September 11th is acknowledged, the memory of Mike is always with you.
Yes, it is.
Our condolences on his loss. He was the youngest firefighter lost that day, just a rookie. What brought him to Ground Zero?
What brought him to Ground Zero was, ever since we were children, we both dreamed of being New York City firefighters. So when we were called to duty, he was called at the age of 22, and I was a New York City police officer. He seized the opportunity to serve the community, and it was his destiny to be a hero at Ground Zero that day. And
yet he had not even graduated from the fire academy, but as a rookie was serving essentially an internship.
That's exactly correct. He was serving a probationary firefighter period where he was actually in the firehouse only 7 short weeks when the September 11th attacks took his life.
And yet his colleagues said that he showed no hesitation to respond when those first calls came in.
Well, you know, all the people that lost their lives, first responders, they were born heroes. It wasn't something they were trained to do. It was something they were put on this earth to do. And we have to respect that.
When did you make your way to Ground Zero?
I made my way to Ground Zero at the time of the second plane attack on the World Trade Center. I was a New York City police officer just across the New York Bay for the Staten Island Task Force, and our quickest means of unimpeded access was to take the Staten Island ferry, and it was then that I realized the first tower had collapsed and Michael was gone.
You knew right away that he had been lost?
I knew right away he had been lost because it's an all-hands operation. The fifth alarm, you know everyone's going in the city.
And yet, at that time, you had to continue to serve as a police officer. What was that like for you, knowing that your brother had given his life and that you still were, were expected to do your job as well?
I had a duty. I took an oath to serve the city. I had a duty to do that and participate in the rescue and recovery at Ground Zero. And I also had a brotherly duty to find Michael, which we still haven't done to this day.
That probably is the most difficult thing that the survivors that I've interviewed over these last 9 years have had to deal with. The realization that they will never have their loved one back to them, not just physically, but even a part of their body. How tough is that on you?
That definitely hindered my recovery, knowing that one day he was here to serve the city and he was my brother and best friend, and the next moment, within 7 seconds, he's gone, wiped off the face of the earth, made the recovery very difficult.
Was writing the book part of that recovery process?
The book definitely served as a vehicle to my recovery. Closure was never given to us, so I had to make my own closure. I was buried underneath emotional rubble for many years, and this was my attempt to escape and get my life back.
And you tell that story in the book. It is called Face of Courage. What do you want people to know, not only about yourself and your recovery, but also about Michael?
Well, Michael was a unique individual. He was a gifted athlete, an old soul, somebody who would do anything for anyone. And this is the story. I let you into that life, and I speak about how you can be at the bottom in your life and you can recover. You're not in it alone, and you didn't have to lose somebody to experience a bad place. We all can these days, and it helps bring some solace to it.
Yeah, he was a remarkable young man, an athlete, as you said, born to serve. And we certainly appreciate the sacrifice that your family has made. We're going to talk more here with Joe in just a second, but I do want to go to the telephone lines where we are joined by Ellen Saraceni, who is the widow of Victor Saraceni, who was the pilot of that first plane that was driven into the Twin Towers. Ellen, thank you very much for being with us. You can certainly appreciate what Joe has gone through, having experienced the loss that you did.
Yes, of course. And I'm sorry for your loss, Joe.
Same to you.
And your recovery, I know, over these last 9 years has been ongoing. How are you and your family doing?
We're doing fine. The girls, of course, have gotten very big, and they're off in college, and, you know, life doesn't stop. You have to go on.
And yet, as you move on in this recovery, there's always a controversy that seems to be surrounding September 11th. Now it is this concept of building a mosque at Ground Zero. What do you think of that?
Building a mosque at Ground Zero will cast a long and ominous shadow over Ground Zero. Ground Zero is a site that holds deep and profound meaning to America and to the 9/11 families. It's hallowed ground. It's the centerpiece of the most deadly and cowardly act on all Americans. You know, I lost my husband that day. My children lost their father that day. You know, and we are trying to rebuild our lives, and that could take years and generations, not just for the 9/11 families, but for everyone. Right. I think that the mosque builders, you know, have expressed this desire to build a bridge between Islam and the West, but bridges are built with goodwill and restraint, you know, with common decency, right. And I think that it's unimaginable for anyone with an ounce of humanity that they could not think that the building of this mosque would be one of the most hurtful acts that could be perpetrated on the victims' families.
All right, Ellen, thank you very much for your perspective on that. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. And very quickly before we take our break, your definition of Ground Zero?
I have a very unique and deliberate definition of Ground Zero. It's not just where the building stood, their footprints, not the block and lot numbers on city record. Ground Zero is the place where the collapse took place, where the smoke filtered through the canyons. Pulverized body parts were in that smoke, and indeed rubble, debris, and smoke past these buildings. The landing gear from one of these airplanes crashed through the roof of this building. That building is Ground Zero. It's not 2 blocks away.
And you oppose the construction or the people behind the construction?
I oppose the people behind the construction and what they stand for.
All right, on that note, I do have to take a quick break, but Joseph Camerata, the author of Face of Courage, thank you so much for being with us. We will take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have that debate on whether or not a mosque should be built near Ground Zero. Stay with us.